Give me 30 seconds, okay?
Okay, we're starting to boot up. Alrighty. Why is this being so weird right now? There it is.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Tavern Talk with us, the Unnaturals Gaming channel and YouTube. I am, of course, the worst one, and I'm together with my partner in crime, if you will.
Yeah, I'm the better one. Yes, as the worst one has stated, welcome back to episode 3 of the Tavern Talk, where we're going to continue with our little, story, and maybe Aaron has a couple more questions about Val, the worst one, wanting to talk to us more about my mindset making these campaigns, and also we'll talk about some other things that we're planning on doing, like some of the game reviews that were posted on our channel.
Yes, 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 yes.
Without further ado,
Get in. Let's get into it.
I know. So, should I just continue from where I left off? The moment Linestra made the wish for Vecna to rip off the crown.
Well, before you do so,
Okay.
I'm just trying to make sure that everything's running correctly, like
Okay.
my Discord here.
Mm-hmm.
I have one Discord, and then I have Dose Discord, and I don't think it's picking you up.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just continue from where we left off. Are we all good?
Okay. Discord.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. This audio is yes.
Cool, cool, cool. So anyway, after those technical glitches, um, basically, our little Linestra, our little paladin slash multi-class cleric, because she did eventually go Twilight cleric, um, decided to make a wish for Vecna to go ahead and I would like to swap crowns essentially with Irina and myself. So Linestra, who is holding the Sword of Cass, as well as now the crown of the Spider Queen, or the barbed vision of the Spider Queen, is what it's called, essentially got swapped. And as that happened, Irina broke to the ground of essentially going into like a magically induced coma, one would say. And because of this, the entire realm of Barovia started to break apart as Vecna was freed. He was basically tearing apart the plane that his magic was holding together. And our heroes, the Unnaturals, Val, Tat, Toph, and Linestra, were all trapped in Castle Ravenloft. And they ended up running out of the castle and into a magical carriage that they had previously picked up along their adventure. For those of you that played Curse of Strahd, this is the magical carriage right after Van Richen's Tower. They were able to get that. and essentially they hopped inside of it and they just nestled down in it. Halfway through, they heard like raging storms. It sounded like a mixture of like a hurricane and a tornado outside, with an earthquake thrown in just for good measure, because you got to have the trifecta. Um, they What was going through your mind when like the realm of Barovia was being ripped apart by a storm, by a planar storm, a chaos storm essentially.
Well, a couple things was going through my mind. One was, uh, let's see, order of operations. So yeah, I think what was going through my mind when I was going through when I was through the lens that was Val, I was expecting to possibly be like this was being torn apart and asunder, and we were gonna land in the material plane like that. We were obviously not in the material plane
I think you
while in
guys were told
Barovia.
that. Yeah, I think you guys were told that in Barovia.
Yeah,
Like Barovia is
yeah,
separated from the material plane and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. And what worried me was falling uh out of the tower to our death if we weren't on the ground was essentially my mindset.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes. And so uh let me see. Another
Pulling out the notes, pulling out the notes.
yeah. That's pretty much. I'm trying to recall back and get the
Well,
mindset that I was
here,
in.
while you try to get into that mindset, I can continue DMing essentially. So this
Okay.
storm happened, and they were all nestled together within this magical carriage, essentially holding on tightly to one another. And that is when all of a sudden Val heard a voice in his head, and it said, "I need you to come with me now." And it was Lockie. Like
Oh
he
yeah,
knew immediately it was Lockie, and he's like, "I need you to come
yeah.
with me right now." And Val was like, okay." And I distinctly remember you going eh, like it was like a half second, like, I gotta do this, and you said okay, and then in that moment the doors from the back of the carriage ripped open and you were just pulled into the storm. Everyone like freaked out as you were lift off away, and the doors shut again. So what was Val
I
thinking
believe.
then?
Yeah, I remember it now. The doors weren't ripped open and he was shunted out. It was I believe you described it like I had the choice to do so.
Yes, he wanted that to be very clear. Like he wasn't gonna pull
Yeah.
you away if
So
you didn't want to be.
yeah. So what the rest of the party looked at Val as he opened the doors
Mm-hmm.
and jumped out into the storm and was then like a leaf in a very high wind hurricane just went
Yeah,
out
just
of
gone
out of eye.
immediately.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And that's when
they saw a couple cows
me
being thrown around.
yeah. And then I had I had the happy fortune to collab with you to create
Mm-hmm.
a pair a unique pair of twins.
As you can see,
Uh
the worst one is obsessed with twin brothers.
yeah, well that was that's what apparently was the theme of the thing going on apparently. And we came up with a very interesting premise
Oh yeah.
of two noblemen, one who was a beacon of light and life and understanding and compassion,
Mm-hmm.
and another one who was just conniving but
It's not
goal
conniving.
driven.
Yeah, it was more like cunning.
Yeah, cunning and goal driven, right?
Yeah.
And they were no, and they were also brothers. They were twins, and we came up with the idea that they were of the Light Hand clan family,
Mm-hmm.
noble family, very high up. They had they were their family comes from a very steep bloodline that's rich with magic. So magic is in our blood, and
Y-
the little deep dark secret is that I believe we said that uh our father was a like we come from an
Yeah,
ASMR,
like an ASMR
and
heavy family. Like the majority of your
yeah,
relatives are ASMRs.
yes, but Papa either had a his last wife who passed, either was his, I can't remember if it was his final wife, his most his wife that passed
Hmm.
before this recent one, or if it was that he made a deal with
It was a
some sort
wife
of
because we came from
devil.
the same
Okay.
mom. We just had a different we came from the same mom and same dad. It was just you came out in ASMR and my character.
Yes, yes, and we basically came up with that the everything would be flipped.
Yep.
So the two brothers were sorcerers.
Yep.
One was a divine soul, and the other one was a shadow sorcerer. But they were linked in such a way where their powers could swap back. They could trade their power back and forth. Like they could switch from divine soul to shadow sorcery, depending on. But it wasn't something that. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. They were Mar and
Soul.
Soul, I think it was.
Yes,
Yeah,
Mar and Soul.
Mar and Soul Light Hand. Soul was the kind, compassionate brother who was a divine soul sorcerer. He was a pale white tiefling.
Yep.
He had the horns, but he was very regal and like it was very smooth, and he looked noble
Mm-hmm.
and almost angelic like, but aside from his devil features.
Yeah.
And Mar, who I was playing, was a ASMR, but he was very regal looking as well, and but he had dark hair, and he wore black and was very abrasive in personality.
Oh yeah.
And the way we played it was just because the shell looks like a certain way doesn't mean that that's what's on the inside. So the tiefling had ASMR attributes, and the ASMR had tiefling attributes. Like Mar had Hellish Rebuke as opposed to Soul. Soul had what was the ASMR one? What was the ability that we get that Soul had? Other
Uh
like the Halo.
yeah, so basically you got as an ASMR, we canonically made it to where you got the racial traits of a tiefling but looked like an ASMR, and I had the racial traits of an ASMR but looked like a tiefling.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
I
And
had the halo and I was able to go into Radiant Soul, which gave me the angelic wings, the ability to fly, that sort of thing. And I believe we
yes.
did Asmodeus Tieflane because our light hand bloodhood, angel blood, is descendant from, I believe, Lathander. So not only that, we had two different chronologies essentially, like two different forms of divine inside of our blood, one from the darkest dark and one from like the lightest light.
Yes. Yes. And it was very fun, like taking this stereotypical tropes and like and subverting them.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the catches we made that made it very fun was that uh Mar could not control the power swap. That was entirely Soul's
Yeah.
ability to shift the power between, and they were intrinsically linked. Where one knew the other one's like emotional state, whether they
Mm-hmm.
were in danger, stuff like that. And since Soul looked like a tiefling, he was kind of treated like the black sheep of the our family since he did not resemble an ASMR.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Mm-hmm.
was like treated unfairly by our family, while Mar was treated like the other. But Mar would always stick up for Soul and be threatened with. so Mar was always kept in check by the family for minding his P's and Q's and doing what is expected of the noble family and to act like he's supposed to act under threat that they would disown and uh, get and basically kick out and disown from the family
Mm-hmm.
soul. So Mar literally would shackle himself in order to keep Soul from being ostracized by the family, essentially.
Yeah.
And I got to do a little cut intermission kind of thing when we introduced two new people to the table that wound up joining the family kind of a little bit later, didn't we? Didn't they join in around this time?
Yeah, so it was only one new person.
Or one.
Yeah, one new. And so basically, after Val gets taken away and the carriage lands and the storm ends, they step outside and they see just outside of the carriage, the grass around it is completely untouched, as if like the deadened grass around Castle Ravenloft was completely just like within 5 feet of the carriage, untouched, unscraped, unmoved. The rest of Barovia was displaced and thrown about. There were trees ripped asunder. There were buildings collapsed. There were the Castle Ravenloft itself. Most of it had fallen off of its own cliff and is now debris below. There was like a few towers left standing, and but all of a sudden, as if by like godly music, sun started peeking through the clouds, and they took a breath of fresh air, and it no longer felt like death. And they looked around, they realized they were back on the material plane. Barovia had smashed back down into the material plane again, and they had made their way along a road, a winding road, where they saw this man being attacked by gnolls. But of course, they weren't just regular gnolls. No, no, no. They were vampiric gnolls. A little last taste of Barovia before our party finally gets to break away from it. But they
Yeah,
were.
because the DM said, "Why not?"
Yeah, so they were attacked by vampiric gnolls. They found that the person that lied on the ground was a new member. He was bleeding out. He was down to literally he was downed. Um and that's how they got introduced to Verici and the paladin sorcerer. Um essentially,
Otherwise known as the
yep.
otherwise known as as Bro Ricci,
Yeah.
founder of the Smite Factory.
Completely. But they got to
Yeah.
meet him and they fought some gnolls, but during that combat they were one party member down and they weren't doing too well because they had another recent addition. So it was basically the three of them that had just got out of another major fight that weren't too bad. They were okay.
The four of them.
No, 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 because you weren't there. The Verici was
No,
out basically zero. They
no.
had to still get him up.
Well, what I mean is like that essentially became a party of four with Lenestra, Verici, Toph, and Tat.
Yeah, you're correct. But I'm talking when they had to fight the vampiric gnolls, it wasn't going too well because they were one person down, Val, and they had just gotten out of a major battle. They hadn't long rested yet after the
Oh
caravan,
yeah,
and Verici was down to 0 hit points. So they basically Nestra popped all of her lay on hands into Verici, got him up. Verici then popped all of his lay on hands into himself to get him even healthier. They started attacking the vampiric gnolls, and then all of a sudden, stepping out of like the shadows and casting this huge prolific fire spell, we have introduced Mar. All of a sudden,
that's yes. Mars stepped out because he was part of the caravan that was attacked, and he finally stepped out. But was his hair was a sheenless white,
mm-hmm.
uh, shining. He was wearing majestic gold and navy blue robes, and he cast. I cast. Let's see, Mark. What did he cast? He cast a significant fire spell. Wasn't it fireball?
It was Fireball.
That's right. Yeah, it was fireball,
And
and
then
it
Wall of Fire.
effectively, and then wall of fire, effectively incinerating a lot of them,
Yeah.
and was introduced, and also cast Cure Wounds
Mm-hmm.
on the party to help heal.
Yeah, because you were a divine soul at the time. Soul had taken the shadow sorcery origin from you, and one thing led to another. The combat ended, and you were talking with the rest of the party, and you all were like getting to know each other essentially. Like everyone was confused. Everyone's like, "What happened to Val?" The two new characters were like, "We don't know who a Val is. We were just here." Varici, an Asamar paladin sorcerer who was also a shadow sorcerer, basically stepped up and said,
Which
"Yeah, what
which
we,
Mar and Verici, we rolled to see if we could sense one another's similarities, and we rolled pretty high, and we both were like, "Oh." And we didn't. They did. They. It was more like, "I know what you are. You're
mm-hmm,
like me," kind of
mm-hmm.
glance and nod without any spoken word. It was a very cool role play moment with, even though there wasn't a lot of words. It was very cool.
Yeah, and Mar felt like a kinship with Verici because Verici wasn't a normal Asamar; he was a fallen Asamar. So he had like that definite like shadow darkness around him that Mar wasn't a wasn't a fallen Asamar. He looked like a like I think it. I'm trying to remember what the all the ASMRs. There's Protector, and then there's one more, but
He was a
Scourge.
scourge.
Yeah,
Scourge.
you
Yeah.
looked like a Scourge ASMR with like your brilliant angelic figure, like facial features, your characteristics, stuff like that. But your latent abilities were all Tiefling. But essentially, they kind of
Yeah,
sense that.
essentially, yeah. Essentially, Mar and was comfortable, felt more comfortable in the realm, in the power of the divine soul
Mm-hmm.
sorcerer role, and Mar felt more at home in the shadow sorcery. But Mar possessed, or Soul possessed, a particular unique ability since he shared a essentially a blood and wound. He shared a wound with his twin brother, that they were intrinsically linked by their souls, and
Yeah,
with that connection, Soul could literally do a class swap with his brother,
yeah,
giving
they could swap sorcerer origins essentially.
yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
Mar couldn't do this, but Soul was the one that possessed that power. Mar's unique talent was that he could wield the power of the Shadow Sorcerer or Divine Soul Sorcerer effectively. It didn't matter which.
Yeah, like he knew naturally how to use either one without like any real hindrance to his character or ability.
Hmm.
Where Soul had to like because he was the one shifting it, it wasn't like he had to knew it was coming. It was more along the lines of like, all right, gotta get in the mindset for it. All right, give it and basically take it. But essentially, it was a strange incident. Things were said and talked about. Mar internally, I remember going through was like, you have been a divine soul for longer than anticipated. Mar had currently.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
wasn't a
Yeah,
shadow
go ahead.
sorcerer right now.
Yeah, go ahead and explain the next steps.
So basically, Mar had been looking for his brother's soul. That's why he was traveling with Verici, and that's why they were attacked on the road. All of a sudden, one day, while Mar was out and about, he felt his connection to his brother gone. Just completely blip off the
Mhm.
map. Just completely
Yeah.
gone. And
Maybe it's just me.
And after that, what would you say happened after that? After Mar felt his connection to his brother just gone. Um, once you're like seeing that and realizing that your brother is no longer connected to you. I remember Mar specifically tried to um at any mention of Soul because the party did meet Soul in Barovia. They met him very briefly and he helped them out in the death house and saved them from like the massive demon at the end that was being summoned from the undead bodies. And they essentially met Soul, and then after Death House, Soul vanished. He was ripped away, and they couldn't find him. Well, the party started traveling a little bit more, and eventually they made it back to Neverwinter, and there was another plane storm happening. another one of these storms
Yeah,
of rifts happening. But go ahead and explain.
damn storms.
Go ahead and explain what was going through Mars' head. Not only when like the party said like, "Oh yeah, we met Soul." Yeah, he helped us in like combat, but also
Yeah,
like what was going through Mars' head when like he hadn't had access to his shadow sorcery, and also it's been like I think canonically it was like a couple months he's gone without feeling Soul.
it was about a little under 2 months since he's felt his
Yep.
brother. And if the audience remembers, I think we mentioned it briefly in the previous episode of Tavern Talk that the group, the Unnaturals, came across a very helpful divine soul pale tiefling, and that's where he was. It was in Barovia, but then he was whisked away mysteriously. I
Mm-hmm.
think I think was it off screen or on screen?
So, the party never saw this, but essentially, as soon as they left the death house and right as they like walked out, a strange mist wrapped around Soul before he could say
Oh,
anything and just kind of pulled him away.
yes, yes. And now, so what was going through Mars' mind when they revealed this to him was that he was cursing his damned family, like
Mm-hmm.
because the whole reason that Soul was even gone was that their unfeeling father, which is once again plays on the subversion that just because you are of a certain origin doesn't mean that you are of said origin. Like those who are devil born doesn't make them evil
Mm-hmm.
just because they origins of a certain way. They're some of the greatest heroes and holy warriors in the world. The paladins were, tieflings or otherwise,
Yeah, he was
and
of
this is
the
a
yeah.
no. Yeah, and these were nobles of divine origin, and
Mm-hmm.
their family spans back so long, and they're angelic and powerful and magic and higher up in like the city's hierarchy and influence that their bastard father set a little uh game
Yeah.
essentially on his deathbed. Not really so much a game, it was more like he was trying to right a wrong, but he could not. In his later years in his deathbed, he was feeling guilty because he fell in love with uh,
A tiefling.
a tiefling, which is taboo in their family, a poor tiefling, which was Soul Hamar's mother. But as opposed to their other siblings, they had six other siblings, right?
Yeah.
And they they hated Soul and Mar essentially, but more Soul because of the way he looked.
Yep.
So the father in his like last ditch effort in the will in his dying breath was that the head of the house will be whoever can go to the crypt or dungeon. I forget what we set up to be,
It was
and
very just
and
plain. It was like if you go to this place and
yeah,
find the
which
family
was
treasure, essentially.
yeah, which was a pendant and recover it and bring it back to the city, to the family thing.
Mm-hmm.
You will be awarded head of the Light Hand family, and you will be, without question, the head of the Light Hand family, and you
Your
essentially your
ranking will
word
be
will be law.
unchanged. Yeah, your ranking would be
Yeah.
unchanged. You are officially blah blah blah. This is definitely not because
In
I feel
charge.
yeah, this is definitely not because the father felt guilty. This is definitely how all this happens. Is basically what the father was
Well,
saying.
yeah, well, essentially, what in my mind when creating this story was that the father was bound by their family's rules and laws and couldn't really change anything except for he knew that in the family, a dying wish or a thing when he died, he had to appoint a new head of the family because Asimars lived for a very long time in our world. Not as long as elves or anything like that, but quite longer than normal mortal.
I mean, they live about
And
300 years. We said same with tieflings.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, tiefling, yeah, around roughly around, depending on your origin, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so on his deathbed, he decided that this was his one last chance to give his sons a fighting chance in the family to make changes that he could not or was too cowardly to confront the family ruling and all this other kind of stuff. And he really did love their mother who passed away, and no one knew what the pendant was or the treasure. Father said that he lost it in a dungeon raid when he was many years ago when he was would go on expeditions and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and in his younger days, and he lost it, and he wants it back to be buried with him.
Yep.
And whoever bring gets this treasure, they'll know it belongs to the Light Hand family because on the front of the pendant uh, will be the Light Hand crest. And once you bring that back, you will be anointed head of clan Light Hand and become the head of the family and the prominent member of the what was it, the merchant district, or head over the merchant district of what city was it, Boulder Gate or
It,
Or Hell, Winter, what was it,
Neverwinter.
Neverwinter?
Neverwinter.
That's that's right, Neverwinter.
But
And
yeah, so that's
but
basically
yeah,
Mar and Soul in a nutshell.
so Soul said, "I'll do it," and Mar was very adamant, like, "No, I'll do it, and I'll bring it, or I'll go with you." But Soul was was like would have said okay, but the siblings intervened and kept
They
Mar
basically,
from
yeah,
helping
they
Soul.
basically wanted it to like the way the siblings came about. They were basically just like, no, Mar, let Soul do it. Let him prove his worth. Essentially, is how they basically worded it to Soul and Mar, and they kind of kept Mar from being near Soul, and Soul went off on his adventure alone.
Yeah, and then how Mar found out that Soul was in trouble is that during in different points in time, Soul very rarely would swap their sorcerer's class, essentially
Mm-hmm.
origins. He would very rarely do it unless it was absolutely necessary.
And he would
Uh,
normally ask too.
yeah, he would normally ask, but and they've never done it while super far away.
Mm-hmm.
So, but whenever Soul would do it, Mar and Soul could feel each other's emotional state and all this other kind of stuff. It would be intrinsically linked. And one day, while Mar was in the family manor, he felt a surge of divine energy rush through him, and the darkness and the shadow
Displaced.
that he loomed over, or that he had control over, was withering away, or like being siphoned away,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a familiar feeling to him. So he knew that Soul was in dire need because he felt Soul's panic and fear
Yeah,
as this was going.
and in that moment that
And
your powers were switched, like literally a second after that, you felt nothing from Soul anymore.
yeah, and he couldn't feel him anymore. And so Mar set up an expedition to go to go find his brother under the
Mm-hmm.
pretenses that he would go find the pendant,
Yep.
but really he was just after looking for Soul.
Yeah. So I mean,
Mar could care less about being head of the
yeah,
family.
Mar hate.
He had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that's completely agreeable. Mar and Soul's family sucked. But that's essentially the general information on Mar. Verici, on the other hand, when they met him, his general story is he is an amnesiac paladin that comes from a village that was literally like plagued by some sort of like death curse or something, where like nearly everyone in the entire village died except for Verici. He was the only survivor, and he has amnesia about all of it. And so he swore an oath of
Yeah,
vengeance to find whatever caused it. But that's the party that we have
I,
right now.
I forget how far we got with Mars part. Should we
We
discuss what was going on? What Val was up to?
we'll save that for next time because that's a lot. But basically, we'll continue with Mar and Verici and the rest of the party and the rest of the gang.
Okay.
After they
Okay.
met, yeah, after they met, they're still in the material plane. They were like, okay, we need to go group up. Let's head to Neverwinter. Let's stock up on supplies because we are hurting right now. So they all gathered their gear and they all went to Neverwinter. Um, the barbarian had finally attuned to a specific crown slash helm that he was wearing. It was very beautiful and ornate, wearing a ton of gemstones. For those of you that have
Did
played,
we
or
discuss where we found that?
it was in Barovia. It was one of the it was one of the treasures in Castle Ravenloft. I believe he got it from
That's
the
right.
Amber.
We
He got
just
it from
grabbed
the,
it.
yeah. He got it from the Amber Temple. It was one of the last things you guys grabbed. But essentially, the barbarian is wearing this beautiful helm. He has not discussed it with anyone, and it's covered in gemstones. For those of you that have
Why don't
played,
you tell the audience what it is?
yeah, that's what I was getting to. If you had played Barovia before or know what Barovia is, it's called the Helm of Brilliance, and we're just gonna leave it at that. And it's not gonna be important at all for the time being. But
Oh, the hell.
yeah, the Helm of Brilliance is what the barbarian, the frontliner, has, and is traveling with a divine soul sorcerer that likes to use fire spells. So anyway, they continue going, and as they make it to finally make it to Neverwinter, they find out that Barovia is canonically on the map of Faerun is called the Fields of Dead now, is where Barovia spawned in at. Um, that's just where we decided to put it. It felt right. And because there's constant undead, it just made sense that, like, yeah, there would be a tear there from either the Shadowfell or Barovia or both. So the Fields of Dead is canonically where Barovia fell back into the map of Faerun. They traveled all the way up north to Neverwinter. They made it to Neverwinter, and once they made it there, they basically found Neverwinter in total, complete destruction. There was a massive void storm circling overhead that was still looming over them. It wasn't raining, it was just cloudy and stormy. There was lightning, there was thunder, there was powerful winds, and the scariest part of it all is when they made it to the coast, the seas were not moving. There was wind. There was
I
definite
I'm
wind.
I'm starting to see a pattern with our play group with the destruction of cities.
There was plenty of wind. There was plenty of storms. Like the seas should be raging and things like that, but the sea was completely still, like a mirror. And that freaked out the barbarian more than anything because the entire ocean was stopped, stagnant water essentially. And so they were just like, oh god, what now? But essentially they make it to Neverwinter after passing by the coastlands, and they see Neverwinter's under destruction. There are some guards outside that are trying to hold back these undead, and they help them. They fight some of the undead, and then the guards tell them, don't go into the city. A bunch of people made refuge through the Fey Gate, um in the forest. That's what we would recommend you doing. And they essentially said, they essentially said, okay, we'll go do that. And after we help this situation in the city, and they're like, no, you really don't want to go in there. And as soon as he said that, they hear the loudest roar possible coming from the city, and they look and they see this massive black dragon, but there's something on its head, something crawling around its eyes, its mouth, its nose, its little ear orifices where it would hear. They see tentacles crawling around it. They see a massive brain sort of
Yeah,
leaning
our
off of it.
lovely DM decided that you know what this needs? We need some mind flayers in this campaign.
So what happened and where we'll end off with this story for tonight and then jump into some other topics like what's coming to the channel and stuff. They make it to Neverwinter, and Neverwinter is being overran by mind flayers, and the Eldritch is consuming
Right.
people.
We'll also leave in this little tidbit. As soon as the group approaches, expecting for utter slaughter and chaos, see that there is a line of defense led by
Mm-hmm.
a man bearing striking resemblance to their friend Val,
Mm-hmm.
leading the Blood Hunters and defending the city from the mind
And not just
flayers.
leading the blood hunters, in establishing and gifting new ones as well.
Yes, which is a
And
big
the guards turn to them and say, "Well, if you follow the blood hunters, I guess you'll be safe." And that is where we'll leave off as the party meets Val's twin brother, or at least they don't know that quite yet. But anyway, jumping out of that story, yeah, I have been recording some game reviews. I currently have one up. I believe it's for Final Fantasy One: Dawn of Souls. It's one of the first games I ever streamed and recorded for this channel, and it's one of the first Final Fantasy games I ever played. The first Final Fantasy game I actually did play was Dawn of Souls. It was on Game Boy. Um,
really, really.
yes, it was the first ever Final
Oh wow.
Fantasy I ever played.
I
Uh,
did not know that about you.
Yep, I played Dawn of Souls first on Game Boy. But my
I was a
first,
bit of a
mm-hmm,
I was a bit of a late bloomer when it came to the Final Fantasy franchise. It's one of my favorite franchises of all time. I think I was first introduced
mm-hmm.
to JRPGs and stuff like that. I think I was first introduced to that genre of game
So
was
yeah,
uh, Legend of Dragoon and Chrono Cross, which led into Final Fantasy VII. Was my first Final Fantasy game.
so I never had a PlayStation or a Nintendo. I had an SNES that I was able to play for my dad, and the only games I got to play on that was Street Fighter and Paperboy. Was pretty much all I got to
Really?
play for the longest time. And then my dad got the original Xbox and then got me and my sister Game Boy Advances. And then the first official RPG game I ever played was Pokemon Yellow, Gold, and Sapphire because I got them all at the same time. And
Well, there is a significant generational gap between us. I was around
mhm.
when Final Fantasy came really came over here to America, and I was there when Pokemon first aired and was a thing before the Game Boy and all that. I was there for the Game Boy's introduction. So
Mhm.
like I
Yeah,
remember my first Game Boy game was Pokemon Yellow. Me and my brothers got a Game Boy piece for our birthdays since they were so close together, and I got a solid purple one,
mhm.
which I was like, oh well, that's not what it's whatever. It was a Game Boy Color,
Yep.
and I remember all three of us were given a little like a little box to open up. And my little brother opened up his, and it was a red version. Then my other little brother opened up his, and it was blue version. And then I opened up mine, and it was yellow version.
The best version because Yellow was also the first
The
Pokemon game I played.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that at the time when
Mhm.
it was first released. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I want red version Charizard, or even Blastoise on blue version. This is lame. But
Mhm.
then when we started all playing it, they're like, I chose Charmander as my starter. I chose Blastoise as my starter. I'm like, I got all three. Holy crap!
Plus Pikachu. Um,
Plus I'm Pikachu. I'm killing it.
yeah, but yeah, I'm excited to do more of those game reviews. I'm excited to play some more. Obviously, more Octopath Traveler to come. Hard mode whooped my butt a couple times. Those bosses
I saw that.
literally, one boss two shot me. I thought I was over leveled. No, I wasn't even a 1/4 high enough level to face this boss yet. So
I did see that.
So I did some research and basically I came back at it and I won. But Octopath Traveler still going strong. But the first official gaming console, since we're talking about like first consoles and games that we played, my first official console that I actually owned, like I got gifted to me, was a Nintendo GameCube. I got that after my Game Boy. Was a Nintendo GameCube, and I got the one type of GameCube that can hook up to a Game Boy actually, and you can play Game Boy games through it. if you remember that.
I do. I do.
I still have it. I still own it to this day. And the games I would play on my GameCube, I had Finding Nemo, I had Scooby Doo, and I had Pokemon Galactic Darkness and Pokemon X, not XD, Pokemon Coliseum. So I had a
Two premium games right there. The last two solid
hey,
games.
the Scooby Doo game, best game ever. Um, Finding
I
Nemo,
can't say that
we're
'cause I
just
never played it or Finding Nemo.
I can't say anything good about Finding Nemo, but Scooby Doo was really fun. But yeah, those were the first two games those were the first console I ever owned, and I still remember getting Shadow Lugia on Gale of Darkness and eventually able to fully purifying it by transferring a bunch of Pokemon from Ruby and Sapphire over to it. Because you had to fill up the entire purification chamber with whole 100% on each of them, and you just the way you did that is by putting one Pokemon in each slot that's strong against the next Pokemon in the next slot. So I just kept doing that over and over with a bunch of the same types, and I purified it instantly. But yeah, that was really fun. But
I on the other hand, I'm pretty sure you can see it. Like me and the best one, the better one here, have similar tastes in video games, but then we also have like our own unique
yeah, like I like
preferred
city management
game.
games, and you stay far, far away from them.
Oh my god, I hate city management games. Oh my god, it's so tedious. I can't do it.
Yeah,
But one thing that I like, I know that I'm in the works, recording videos. I'm getting them to where I like them, where I need them to be, and I'm have them start scheduling out. There's going to be more frequent videos dropped from me on the channel and on Twitch for Mass Effect journey that we got going on. The Baldur's Gate 3 journey, we'll have to take a pause on that due to the patch 7. Everyone knows, I'm sure everyone knows by now the patch 7 update. And the
we'll be back at it again soon enough once we get it worked out. But for right now, we may just have to pause it for a little
yeah,
bit.
there's some I do have some Dragon Age. I want to run it. Dragon Age is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I'm
Hmm.
excited for the new one, the fourth one to come out. I want to run the Dragon Age games. I run those. So please, leave a comment, and leave a comment on the channel and tell me should I start with Dragon Age 1 Origins and run it through all the way through Awakening and its DLC, or should I just jump into Inquisition or Dragon Age 2? I would love to revisit Origins and Dragon Age 2. Dragon Age 2 is one of my favorites, but I thought that was going to be my favorite for the longest time. But once I got played Inquisition, I could play Inquisition forever. I love that game.
I recommend you start with the first one because Dragon Age Veilguard's coming out soon, so might as well get a complete refresher.
I know. So excited for that. I'm excited for what Larian Studios has also done and what
Hmm.
they doing. It's very rare we get to see a game company, game studio, really care about the quality of the game, how fans and the players want to play the game, and that you can really feel and see that finally there's a game company, a game studio out there that wants the longevity of their game to continue on long after it leaves their hands, and they're giving it to the players, and you don't ever see that.
Hmm.
And to introduce patch 7 with the modding tools for players to essentially make the game any way that and enhance their game any way they want, and each one will be unique to that person through these different modding tools. It's so awesome. Like, they deserved all those rewards that they got. The
Hmm.
game is fantastic. I'm just blown away by how well Larian Studios have done in terms of game quality, respecting the gamers, and the material itself is just mind blowing. I just had to throw that out there because, like, after I got that news and did my research on it, it's just you never see that from game companies because it's always microtransaction, this, that, squeeze as much money as you can out of the gamers and the community. It's just
Hmm.
it's just it's super refreshing to finally see a game company really care about what they're doing and the consumers themselves, and they want this game to continue on and have a life of its own and grow and become something even better and more wonderful for each individual person, with their fate literally and their way of playing in their hands to make it any way they want. It's just my I just felt like it needed a shout out.
But yeah, speaking of thank you for like just in general gratitude. We again want to thank you all for subscribing, liking, commenting, following, and watching our videos. But I think we are gonna end this tavern talk here, and next time we're gonna delve into what Val's been doing, and then maybe also a little bit about the fight in Neverwinter against the Mind Flayers versus the Blood Hunters.
Absolutely. And please, guys, we cannot stress it enough. We are super grateful and blown away by the support that you all have been showing by, subscribing and viewing and watching our videos. And it's really put like a pep in our step in what we're doing. And we're going to just keep getting better as time goes on. And with your
Mm-hmm.
guys' support, it just fuels us to do even better and go more and more above and beyond. And please, let's not stop this train now. Let's just keep it going. Let's make it grow even better. So, the drill. Leave a like, subscribe, click on that notification bell. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, on
TikTok.
Twitch. Follow me yeah, and on TikTok. That's right. Yeah, and on TikTok. Please head over to Twitch on Naturals Gaming. It it really does help us out a
Mm-hmm.
lot. We're trying to get this thing built up so much to where me and the better one here can make this
Our
our
job.
full-time job, our job, like
Um,
just cranking out even better and more content for you guys.
But yeah, as always, keep going what you're doing. As the worst one has said, let's keep it going. But as we've stated in previous episodes before, if you want to listen to this before Friday, please go join our Patreon, and this is automatically uploaded to our Patreon. You can sign up there and join and watch, and also talk with us directly through Patreon as well. But other than that, is there anything else you want to say, worst one?
Yes, everyone, I would like you all to have a fantastic evening, and just remember, there's nothing wrong with being a little unnatural.
Yeah, what he said.